Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Oh, we have a little lag. Sorry about that.
It's not bad for having you over the pond, my friend. So we're doing.
That's true.
Well. Here, well, why don't you welcome us all in?
I will welcome us in. Welcome here to Wisdom of the Mystics. Today I'm here with Reverend Kathy Mastroianni, who is the Executive Director of the Science of Mind Archives. And my name is Laura Topper. I'm here with New Thought Media Network. Of course, I'm a practitioner here, licensed practitioner here with the network. And we broadcast here daily, New Thought Media Network, sharing programs like this, educational, entertainment, inspirational, empowering broadcasts to bring us closer to the knowing of the truth of the love that we are. And of course, we talk about New Thought and the teachings of Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind. And that's why we're here today, to reveal more about these amazing mystics that have inspired Ernest Holmes and many, many others throughout the ages, and particularly me also, and Reverend Kathy. So thank you for being here. And Reverend Kathy, I know that you're going to be introducing our super guest today on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Yeah, we're so excited today in light of everything that Laura's already shared with you. So I am Executive Director of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. And we're here, our mission, our vision is to preserve, protect, and present science of mind philosophy and history for all of you and for the whole world. It's quite a high honor and a high task to steward this history. And we have, for our very special super guest, is the founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. And she is an author. She really is the historian for our Science of Mind movement. She has written so many books to bring the history to life and to bring it accessible to everyone here. And most notably, her most recent book is called Mother of a Mystic, and it's the life of Anna Columbia Holmes, who is Ernest Holmes' mom. And so Dr. Marilyn, she has won many awards in our movement. She was actually given the Living Treasure Award. And now we've learned that through the International New Thought Alliance, she's going to be honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award coming up at their upcoming Congress. And so without further ado, it's my great honor to introduce Reverend Dr. Marilyn Leo. The crowd goes wild.
Hi, Dr. Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome here. Welcome. It's such an honor that you've said yes to being here on this global broadcast to inform us and educate us more deeply about the women in Ernest Holmes' life. I'm really interested to see what comes through here for today. So thank you.
And how perfect that we just had Mother's Day. And so we're honoring truly the mothers of our religious science teaching. Anna Holmes is Ernest Holmes' mother, and even Hazel Holmes is truly, as a beautiful wife and partner of Ernest, was like a mother to our movement as well. And that you were a neighbor for them. And so you really personally knew these beautiful women that we're bringing forth today. So we're grateful you are here. And we would love to hear about them as people. Who were they as people? So who was Anna and Hazel Holmes? What memories do you have of them?
Well, Anna Holmes was the mother of 9 boys, one of which didn't get past being a toddler. But so Ernest grew up with 8 brothers. They're all boys. And they lived on a farm in different places around in Maine. And my book shares with you about her birth and her life with her mother. And then we go into what it was like to live at that time. I describe her. She was a petite, very small, petite lady. And she passed on, I think it was 1949. And so I did know her. But she had, I describe her as like, if you imagine the pioneer women that came across the, in the covered wagons and that. She's a little one, but boy, she could, give it out. And I would think she'd have to have 8 boys to keep under control, because her husband was always working, as a farmer or wherever he could get work. That would mean that she had to do a lot of all parts of the daily life, including raising the boys. And wherever William Nelson, her husband, would go to get a job, then she and the 8 boys would go there also, and she'd set up household there. So it is quite interesting, quite an interesting life. Yes. And Hazel was brought up in the Los Angeles area with prestigious background, kind of. She attended opera, opera background. She was never on stage because that wasn't her desire, but that was her education. And some of her classmates were Adela Rogers St. John's was a lifelong friend. And I understand Paul Williams also knew her at a young age. Robert Stack's mother, Betty Woods, they were good friends also. And these people remained good friends throughout Hazel's life, or their life, whichever came first. So. But Hazel was very important in Ernest's life. They were in their, I think she was 1927. If I'm remembering, she was about, I think she was close to 40, or she was 40 when they were married. And so that they did not have any children at that time. But she was very instrumental in, shall I say, keeping Ernest in line, so to speak, because he loved to talk, and he at homes and parties and everything, he would just talk. And sometimes Hazel would hear him, and she said, "Now, Papa, let's stick with the let's don't go too far off of this." In other words, don't exaggerate too much, And she reminded him to take his slippers off before he would leave the house, so he'd have shoes on and things like that. Because he was very casual, very down to earth, and his thoughts were always elsewhere, I guess you might say. He was a very loving person and a great sense of humor, and just kind of just a really nice guy.
Wow.
So, and she was a very giving person, as Ernest was also very giving.
So I'm also really interested, Dr. Marilyn, in this his upbringing, and that the Anna Holmes that didn't ever instill any fear into Ernest. We hear about that. We read of he was really brought up in a household where fear didn't enter into the dialogue of how those children were brought up, and he didn't believe in bringing that into his idea of life. And so how would Anna have instilled that into her life?
Well, she and her husband, they were Congregationalists at that time, and they did attend church regularly, and they read from the Bible every day around the kitchen table, all the boys. And at night she would read poetry to the boys. And Ernest was very he could memorize things very easily, and so when she'd read something a couple of times, he would know what it, he would have it memorized. And so he had that kind of a brain working. But she and William Nelson, her husband, they did not believe in teaching fear, or that that the boys were from the worms, like worms of the dust, or whatever it is that sometimes there's things are taught. I don't know. I've never been in that arena, but so they did not believe in that kind of thing. However, people sometimes think that what she believed is where Ernest got his ideas about his philosophy, and it is not. In fact, he was on his own. When he was 18, he went to Boston and lived with his with some relatives, and his brothers were all older than him. He was the youngest of all of them, and he would go to the public library and read from read about art and science and philosophy and astronomy and anything he could get his hands on to study. And he came across the book of Emerson, one of Emerson's books, in either his brother's or his uncle's home, and that interested him also. And he began to speak about and think about his ideas about life. And his mother kept a very close eye on him, so that she wanted to make sure he wasn't going to wander too far off of what the Congregationalists were teaching and what she was believing. So I guess she didn't say a whole lot, but she was in Fenwick's book, where I took some of this information from. She kept a really close eye on him about that. And finally, after years and the different stories about how he came to California, and he had followed Fenwick and his mother, who were already out in California, and he became a part of, very outgoing, very vivacious, became a part of that congregation. And then he would give some of his ideas, and I can just see Anna, no, I don't know about, kind of question about that. But she did come around, and eventually Fenwick pretty much was teaching pretty much the same thing also. That was many, many years later, though. You have to realize this really early, and I'm sorry I don't remember the years, but Ernest started speaking about 1915, 1917, something like that, two groups of people. So anyway, that's Ernest taught his mother and brothers about his own philosophy. He was the originator of it.
Yes. Amazing. And I love it that they were really both teaching. They were teaching each other, because to instill that no fear into him, I believe it laid such an amazing, incredible foundation for him to be able to really take new thought and run with it.
Yes, I would guess that would be very prominent in yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you in what you're saying. Yes. So what else would you like to know about them?
Yes.
Or other people?
So we were also wondering, what these two women, they're so, obviously so prominent in Ernest Holmes' life. How were they with each other?
Well, they all
What was their relationship?
Yes, I know it was very good, because Ernest and Hazel, 1927. Ernest was already living on the hill, 3.5 acres up on the hill in Palms, California, which is a suburb near Culver City, between Culver City and Venice. And he had purchased this property, and he and at least Guy and his family were living there. And Hazel came, and they were married in 27 and got married and lived there. And also Anna and William came to live there also. So it was quite a layout. There was I can see it in my mind's eye, but there's like two houses connected in a way. And then there was down the hill, there was another house, and that's where Guy and his family lived. And so there was plenty of room for them. And by the way, that house was purchased by Adela Rogers St. John's when Ernest and Hazel decided that they wanted to live closer to where the institute or the home office was at that time, up on near Vermont and Wilshire. And so they moved up into that area. And Mother Holmes passed on that same year, later in the year after they moved.
Okay.
But yes, they had I assume a very good relationship, because I think Hazel had a good relationship with most everyone. And my father tried to, wrote many books also about Ernest, several. And he called her, in describing her, she had beautiful red hair, and she had long hair, and she wore it in the pompadour, the style of the day. And she had clairvoyant eyes, I think is how he described her.
Oh.
She was very clairvoyant. Mm-hmm.
So she must have had a high consciousness for him to marry her, because he wouldn't have entertained anything else, anything other than that, would he?
No. She had been married, and she had been very much in love with her husband. His last name was Foster, and but he died very young, and so then she was close to his mother and lived with her for a while before she married Ernest Holmes.
Right.
And there's some other things that went on in between there, but her next love was her next real love was Ernest, and he was 40. I think she might have been 43 and he was 40, because she was 3 years older than him.
Okay.
And then it's always been interesting to me that I think that was her age, and when they passed on, he died 3 years after her, and so they died at the same age. And so it's certain things. The number 3 really comes up quite a bit in their relationship and different things about them.
Really?
Whatever that mean. I don't know what it might mean, but I just find it interesting.
Oh, the spirit, soul, and body, the Trinity.
So those
Amazing.
were yeah, those were two women, and I would say that at least Hazel, I would say that she was a very mystical woman. I really I believe that. Anna, she was a very practical, down to earth, and not saying that Hazel wasn't, because she was, but and she had to be with Ernest being who he was. You know, she had to be down to earth. But I wouldn't. Although Anna had some lovely writings, she did some lovely writings and of poetry and a few different things. But I don't think I would put her into the mystical. Although everyone has mystical experiences, don't get me wrong. But when we talk about mysticism, though, I think that it's even though we all have mystical experiences, there are, I think, different. I don't even want to categorize them, but they're not psychics, and they're not. I mean, they may be psychic, but psychics are not necessarily mystics. And at any rate, I just think that Hazel was more of a. Although I don't think she wrote anything at all, but she was a wonderful practitioner. She had lots of clients, and she was Ernest Holmes' practitioner also from the time they got married, and she understood philosophy and all that. She was his practitioner. Anna was one of the first practitioners when Ernest started. When Ernest took an office and paid for a building office, he and Anna and Reg Armour, my dad, were the first two practitioners, and they would have a room, and they would trade off certain days where they would have clients come in. Funny story about my dad. He was very young. He's like 18, 19 years old. He just, and he grew a mustache so that he would look older, so that people would, respect him as someone who could do practitioner work. But and that stayed with him all his life. He always had a mustache. Every summer, well, I won't say every summer, but I remember summers when we might go to the beach or something and spend a few days. And in fact, we went to Laguna this particular time I'm thinking of. And he had black, very straight hair. No, but I mean, no, you couldn't even think of curling it. But he would sit out on the beach in the sand, and my sister and I would take curlers and try to make his hair curl. And I know we got him to shave off his mustache one time, so we can see what he looked like without a mustache. Oh. Anyway, it was. He went along with it as long as he was on vacation, I guess, and didn't have to be in the office. So is it good? That was good.
How close was he with Ernest Holmes?
Very close. He met Ernest when he was 12 years old, and Ernest was 27. He worked for the city of Venice, and he also he led at that time. Let's see, he was 12. He was born, and so it'd be 1915 because he was born in 1903. So 1915, he was playing baseball, and Ernest, I understand, was the umpire of the Parks and Recreation there in the park in Venice. And they lived close to each other. And Reg lived on Rialto. We used to go and see his mother there. And Ernest lived nearby. And so they would walk home together. And they became very close throughout Ernest's life and Reg's life.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Yes. And Reverend Sherry is online watching, and she has a question. And I think we can relate it to Anna. And so she asked, where did Ernest get his belief that there is no heaven or hell as places, just human experience? Did he cross paths with the Unitarians or Universalists?
I don't know that he did. He crossed paths is what I'm referring to. The philosophy is he just took things, ideas from Plato and Plotinus and all the philosophers that he could find. He would take, you'd really be amazed how many of the philosophers have very similar ideas. And I think he just, and also in the religions, every religion is basically the same if you take away the dogmas and the ceremonies and all that kind of thing. The basic teaching of oneness is basically the same in all. So I realize that others don't like to think that, but it's truth as far as I'm concerned. And so, but as far as that particular subject, I think he just, I don't know. That part of other religions is part of a dogma. It's not taught. Jesus didn't teach that. Ernest believed the teachings of Jesus and of other great teachers. The teachings, not what people created or thought they said. Oh, here's another question. Oh, thank you.
Oh no, this is Susan Donovan. She's here. How fun to hear about the life of Ernest Holmes. Yes, it is. It's wonderful to hear about Ernest and his childhood and his roots and his mother and his wife, and how these women really influenced Ernest and influenced him to have the freedom in his mind. How do you think, Dr. Marilyn, that his mother, Anna Holmes, how much of an influence was she on him with this? Because he was really forging a whole new way for
Right.
spirituality.
Well,
her support would have been, sounds like he would really have wanted her support in that.
She believed in the Christian church, but she believed in the beautiful poetry of many, and I think, and then the lack of teaching fear, and he was it's interesting. Ernest was a child of curiosity, which all children are. All children want to know, how do you do this, or why do you do that, or how, that kind of thing. They come to a certain age and that's all they can do is ask questions. And he stayed there in that capacity of always wondering how things worked or why people thought the way they did about certain things. And he would think about those and think about in his reasoning mind whether that really could be true or not. And I think that is a whole lot of, and his mother was very, shall I say, patient and willing to, desiring that he think openly. That's
right.
Really something. He had two brothers, Fenwick and Jerome, who both became Congregationalist ministers. Also, one was in Japan for a while, not as a minister, but as I've forgotten what you would call it, but and then Fenwick, of course, was he also went to seminary. Now, those two brothers went to seminaries. Ernest never went to a seminary. His education, formal education, ended at, I think it was the 8th grade. So everything else
Right.
he learned on his own. So he's really a self-taught man.
And wasn't Anna a teacher?
She had been a school teacher at a very young age, but that would be, when they were first married, I guess. Before she was married, they became very. You see any of those old movies of that era, mid 1800s to late 1800s, school teachers were just, mothers or women who went and taught kids how to do things. Yeah. I guess they had to be certified and perhaps go to school of some kind. But, I don't know. But she was a school teacher.
With 8 children, she would have had a little bit of experience.
Definitely. in the early years, before she was married.
So they were all boys, you said? And
yes.
So 3 you've mentioned, and one who passed away, who transitioned as a young child.
Yes.
So 4 more. Were they close as well? Did they stay close and follow religious science?
Well, see, I lost count of what you had said. There were 9 boys altogether. One passed as
9 boys.
Father. So when Ernest was born, he had 7 brothers. That makes 8 boys.
Right.
So as far as Ernest was concerned, his life he had 7 brothers, and 2 of those brothers went to seminary, and the rest of the boys became shop owners, and one became a butcher, and different areas of regular life.
Okay.
And I believe some remained in Maine, and in fact, I guess, Guy came to California for sure, and the others I'm sure came for visits, but they didn't stay here. But Guy stayed here, Fenwick stayed here, Jerome ended up in Hawaii. His family is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, Jerome, I became very well acquainted with Jerome's son, who his name was Fenwick Lindsay. I don't remember now, but he wrote an ancestry list of everybody in the Holmes family from his father on, and he sent me that book that he had created. He gave that to me when I saw him, actually. And so I have a couple of pages of that in the book to show the ancestry of Heath. Anna Columbia Heath was her maiden name, and also William Nelson Holmes, because his name was Holmes. And I believe he was from, his family came from like Nova Scotia. And Anna's family, Heath family, I believe was came on the Mayflower or sometime at that point. So very early history.
Really?
In the U.S. Mm-hmm.
So she would have come on the Mayflower, she would have come from Europe.
Yes. Well, her family, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't know that it was the Mayflower. I'd have to review. I wrote the book a few years ago, so I'd have to review that. But she came at that time.
Yeah.
Or not she, but her ancestors. Her ancestors.
Quite a lot of people.
Yeah, a few hundred years before her. So, So, and then I also have just a little blurb that Fenwick, the son, shared with me on each of the brothers, where they end up, what kind of work they did or the business they were in and that kind of thing. one of the wonderful things, and this is what really got me started on this, was in our archives, we have these handwritten notes from Anna to Ernest and to Ernest and Hazel. And they are like our Ernest's birthday. She would write this lovely note. It's all in her own handwriting. And so we have, I don't know, half dozen of those. And so I wanted to, it's not always easy to read, so I would type it out and what I believed it to say. And then we started from there as far as the interest in getting our history is concerned. And also the president of the archives was the person, Jim Van Cleve. He was a person he kept saying, wonder what his mother was like, you know? And so I said, well, let's find out. And so I decided to write a book. So that's about all I need to get me going. And it's the subject. And then we just started. I went every place I could think of to get information about her and what she did and who she was. You know, there's that's all right. Yes, Laura?
So what was her personality? What was Anna Holmes' personality and Hazel's personality? If you could kind of sum them up as people.
All right. Well, Anna, I would have met her in when my mother married Reg. I was 8 years old, and that was 1943. So in 43, she lived 6 years later, so she was already in her 90s. And what I remember about her is that she was always, you know, sitting in a chair and very quiet, you know, just kind of looking around. You know, I don't know. But she was a very active person, you know, with the Red Cross and knitting clubs and things like that in the Institute. But I just remember her, just her presence. I don't remember anything specifically about her. Yeah. But I do remember her. And Hazel was like very active, but both she and Ernest loved to entertain, and there was always parties at their house or ours or someplace else, and they were always invited to our house, and we were always invited to theirs. And she would, you know, she was there, but they always had someone who did the serving and that. She was just a very generous person, pretty quiet. You know, Ernest was the one that was on stage, whether in his home or wherever. And but she wasn't a silent person, but she was quiet. You know, I don't know. Can you know the difference between being quiet and but not silent? Okay.
Yes.
And just a very gracious kind of person. They had lots of people and all walks of life. They would invite people that worked at the Institute from the staff, perhaps a couple of ministers, perhaps a couple of movie stars, perhaps a couple of scientists, all mixing it together. And that was one of the things that I thought was so wonderful, because they were willing. You know, a lot of people, they say, well, tonight we're going to have just scientists, you know, because they could talk to each other. But Ernest and Hazel did not. They believed in mixing people, that they all were, since they were all of one mind, they certainly could communicate. Maybe not on every subject, but on enough, you know, that they could talk to each other.
And I know some of your stories of Hazel's generosity, that someone would compliment her on her hat or some jewelry, and what would she do?
Right. There's one instance, we had our backyard was connected to theirs. It was just a walk-through path, And we had lots of barbecues outside and family things. And so one time, Reg's family was over for a barbecue, and they were all outside. And Hazel and Ernest and Hazel always, just drop by. And Hazel always had her, well, I don't think she had gloves on that day, but she always wore high heels and a hat and gloves usually. And she came over, and Reg's sister, I think it was Reg's sister, commented on what a pretty hat she had on. It was an outside sun hat. And Hazel said, "Oh, I'm so glad you like it." And Hank gave it to her. And Hazel gave my mother lots of things, but particularly a brooch, which I have now donated to the archives. And it's of a ostrich, and the body of the ostrich is a black pearl. And what I've since learned from little notes that I find of my mother's and that, she always wrote everything down. Peggy Lee had given that to Hazel, and then Hazel gave it to my mother, and then my mother gave it to me. So that's how it got into the archives, because I believe that that's where it belonged. So that's
right.
So we have some special things in the archives. We have Hazel had a prayer rug that she had in her bedroom, and she had a bedroom, like and a sitting room kind of thing, and I think that's where she did her meditation and that. And she had this lovely, I'd say it's orange, basically. It's a silk thread little rug, and we have that hanging in the archives. You can see that.
Okay.
We have some of Ernest's cufflinks. He had lots of cufflinks, because at that time the men all wore the French cuffs, and then you had to have cufflinks to go with. So we had several pairs of those. So we had a lot of those. What else, Kathy, do you think that people would be interested in the archives?
Well, didn't she have, what was Hazel's nickname?
Oh, okay, Madam Buddha?
Yeah, Madam Buddha.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that for the Science of Mind magazine a few years ago. Yeah.
Madam who?
Buddha. She collected.
Madam Buddha.
Collected miniature Buddhas. And my sister remembers her as always being sitting quietly, at parties or any place. She was always so serene. And so
I love that, Madam Buddha.
I don't remember now if Ernest began calling her that or what. Somebody started it. I think it was probably Ernest.
And thanks to Dr. Marilyn, we have many of these personal belongings here of Anna and Hazel, mainly Hazel and Ernest. But the other one is we have a beautiful Kuan Yin that was Hazel's. And so that's the neat thing about, thanks to Dr. Marilyn and collecting these things with her families, you can really feel the presence of them. You can feel, we have Hazel's jacket that Dr. Marilyn's sister donated to the archives. And we have that hanging on the wall next to Ernest Holmes' plaid shirt. And we have their arms reaching each other, so it looks like they're holding hands into eternity. It's just, again, really grateful for Dr. Marilyn's whole family and all their contributions here.
Well, we had the red Chinese furniture that Ernest had given my parents, and so that's there also, and a couple of very beautiful chairs that were in my dad's office are there, and we have there's we call it a cigar ashtray because Ernest smoked cigars, and it's you sit it next to a chair. It's on a stand, and so that's there, and there's a few other things like that. Not a whole lot, and someday I hope to do more. But
we'll have to have a guided tour, Reverend Kathy, on one of the Mystics shows. You can go around with the camera showing everybody.
We'd love
And Shari has written in here, and we have quite a few messages here from people watching. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and being here with Reverend Kathy Mastroianni and myself and Reverend Dr Marilyn Leo. We're talking about the two women in Ernest Holmes' life and their influence. Anna Holmes, his mother, and Hazel Holmes, his beloved wife. And Dr. Marilyn has written her book, one of many books, Mother of a Mystic, all about Anna Holmes and Anna's influence on Ernest Holmes. And Sherry, you've left a couple. Oh, there's the book. Thank you. I'm going to actually, if I make the screen a little bit larger, take that down for the moment. You can just hold your book up again, please, because it will show people. The link to this book is in the description. I think Reverend Kathy,
it's in the chat. It's in the chat right now.
Yeah, so it can go in. You can link straight through to Centers for Spiritual Living, to their shop, and purchase the book there to really read up on Anna and her life.
Right.
Sherry has just written here about the brooch. She loves what you were talking about, the brooch, and Peggy Lee, because Peggy was quite an influence also in Ernest's life. He influenced her. He was an influence for her.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yes, he definitely was an influence to her, and he and Hazel, of course, were her practitioners, and she writes about Ernest in her autobiography. So if anybody wants, she's one of the few people. There were many people that attended Founders Church and before Founders. Founders didn't exist before Ernest died, just right a couple of months after that opened, after Founders opened. But before that, there were many people that attended Founders and perhaps still do that. But they never, it always comes out. It's, well, let's see, Ben Vereen and Mickey.
Dolan?
No. I want to say, Mickey Mouse is the only thing that comes to my mind, and that's not Mickey Mouse. Oh dear, the man that had 7 wives or so. Anyway, he was there a lot, and there were a lot of movie actors that were there, and then later on in Founders, because William Hornaday was very influential also, because he was the founding minister. He was the minister of Founders Church.
Was it Mickey Rooney?
Yes, Mickey Rooney. That's who I'm thinking of.
Sherry.
There we are. We have Sherry. Mickey Rooney. Did he have 7 wives?
There are many. Esther Williams and so forth. And it's hard to tell, just when they came into the church, whether it was after Ernest or before, but they all, they can come into Science of Mind, but the Science of Mind doesn't seem to get into their publicity as much as perhaps Christian Church or something.
Right.
Anyway, someone was asking about Emma Curtis Hopkins, if we have just a moment.
Let's put this up here. Sherry had asked how the influence of Emma Curtis Hopkins on Ernest Holmes. Yes, she'd like to know from your viewpoint that relationship.
See, I really don't know much, in fact, anything about that other than what I have heard or read. And basically, most of everything that I learn is from reading. And so everybody can learn these things about different people, except the personal experiences with our family and Ernest's family. I have lots of those personal experiences, and those are probably in another book that I wrote. Yeah, they are. They're in another book, and that book can only come. You can purchase it through me. It's called In His Company, Ernest Holmes Remembered.
Okay. That's not on Amazon.
Yes,
thank you, Reverend.
Kathy has that one. And
It's
that
actually through the archives website
Through
as
the
well.
archives.
okay. And that but that one tells personal stories from many people's viewpoint, plus our families and Ernest and Hazel also. But Emma Curtis Hopkins, she gets lots of credit, but my understanding is that Ernest was only with her for just a few sessions of classes.
Yes.
And that was the only time that he was with her at all. So, but what she taught must have had great influence on him, and because she is a wonderful teacher, and so I don't know what else I can say about that.
Yes, there is a lot about her. In fact, Sherry, if you go back to one of our Wisdom of the Mystics that was, I think, a few months ago with Dr. Ruth Miller.
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth Miller, and she talks really extensively about Emma Curtis Hopkins and Ernest Holmes. So that's on the Science of Mind archives or website or YouTube. You can find it there. You can find that series of Wisdom of the Mystics there. So we've answered your question in an hour-long other broadcast.
So Dr. Marilyn, what would you say for Hazel and Anna? Like I know that Anna was Congregationalist, and Hazel was religious science. So what would you say? What would be some useful wisdom that they would share, maybe as mothers of our movement, that our listeners could take with them moving forward into their lives? What would they share for us?
Well, I don't know about Anna, but Hazel, I think, would just she would say study and practice science of mind principles, and just daily practice is what's important. It's easy to drop off or get sidetracked, which I did many times in my life. Hopefully I am back on track and will stay really close to it. But I think that's what Hazel would say. It's just to practice, to meditate, to remember who you are, and to remember that we all come from, we are all a part of that one infinite presence. That's it. That's who we are. We're all the same stuff. It's like one star, and all these little starlets came from that one star. But everything that was in that one star is in every single one of those other stars, because that's where they came from. So that's us, and that's God. The stars.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got that one from, but it sounds good.
That was beautiful. That was from Spirit and Hazel.
From Hazel.
Hazel.
She was a star, that's for sure. People loved her. Very patient.
Do you think her spiritual practice was, did she practice with Ernest? Do you think they meditated together and prayed together regularly?
That I have no idea. I know that Ernest dressed in the mornings. He dressed in the mornings and had his breakfast, and then he went into his office and did his meditation and treatments and writing and all that. And sometimes in his bed he would read and do his writing on whatever he could find, because he just loved to write. Hazel, she is a mystery. She was a mystery when she was alive. She remains a mystery. Very little about her.
Okay. Wow, very private person.
Her mother and Augusta Rundle were sisters, and Augusta Rundle was a real estate person, a broker, salesperson, and her sister, what was her name? Gillian was her last name. I think her first name anyway, or Hazel's mother, and the father evidently had money. Her father evidently, and they owned an apartment building there up by the Ambassador Hotel at what's that 7th in the Vermont area. Yeah, right, real close to the Institute building.
Okay.
So that's about that background, and then the schooling, and but I have written about that someplace. It must be in that book, in his company.
That's where I was looking for it. So
There's just four books. I mean, I have other writings in another one, Conversations with Ernest, and I created a conversation between Emerson and Ernest. I created a conversation.
Wow.
So that was a wonderful experience, doing lots of writing for Science of Mind magazine. And now I have the honor of creating, and I've got to get with it. And I know I have your prayers in creating the daily guides for next January. So thank you for your prayers about that.
Yes.
My first opportunity
That's so
to
cool.
do that.
That's really cool. How fun.
Yeah. Thank you. I thank Holly Sharp for all that she does for us and for me personally.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Dr.
And
Marilyn,
what would you?
well, go ahead, Laura.
You go, Reverend Kathy.
I just happened to be have these books. I mean, so Dr. Marilyn wrote Chronicles of Religious Science, volumes 1 and 2. And I mean, truly, you learn the chronicle, the history of our religious science movement and what has happened. In addition, in his company and, the other books. I do highly recommend checking out Dr. Marilyn's various books to learn more.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Marilyn, for all of your writings and being willing to share this information through books, because it's so powerful to keep the memories in our hearts and so that we can learn more and understand more of Ernest and his life and his family as well. I wonder what Anna would be saying to Ernest right now. What do you think she would be saying to him about Science of Mind and Centers for Spiritual Living and the archives and the expansion and the unfolding of this teaching?
What Hazel would be saying to Ernest?
What Anna would be saying?
Oh, Anna, look what you started. Yeah, look what you've started. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
You were right to keep it up. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for sharing here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been very interesting and relaxing and enjoyable. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Good. And I know you have exciting times coming up, because you are being awarded an incredible award in the next month or so with INTA. So I know that you're a busy person with so many things on the horizon coming through right now. So thank you for gifting your time to us today.
Your inspiration. She turned 87 years old this year. So absolute inspiration for all of us.
Oh, yes, that really is.
And I can't say goodbye without mentioning the Heflin Foundation, which has done so much good in Science of Mind, and I serve on that. I have, from the original. Marion asked me to serve on that as corporate secretary, and the education committee. So I'm very proud to participate with that group. Very happy about it.
Thank you so much for mentioning the Heflin Foundation. They're an incredible body of an entity doing so much work to
Yeah.
keep the teachings thriving globally. I know that. So thank you for all that you do, Dr. Marilyn. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Wisdom of the Mystics. And of course, we're with New Thought Media Network. I'm going to just pop the banner up here. If you love New Thought Media Network, like and share and tell your friends about all of this, and share this wonderful video out so that everyone can learn more about Dr. Marilyn Leo and Anna and Hazel Holmes. And of course, here is the donate button. You can donate straight into the network here, knowing that you love what the network are doing, New Thought Media Network globally, to keep these teachings in our hearts and remind us of who we are as love.
And our next show on the 4th, so we're on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. On May 24th is Dr. Petra Weldis is going to talk about Ralph Waldo Emerson. So if you want to learn about Ralph Waldo Emerson, who we mentioned here today, please join us in a couple Tuesdays. And so we're grateful for everyone here, grateful for all the sacred work of the Science Mind Archives. That again is thanks to Dr. Marilyn and her great vision that just continues to grow. And so we're grateful for everyone and their support.
Thank you, everybody. Until next time. Bye for
Thank
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.